Hello, my name's Paul Stockdale from ABCPE, the site where we try and make VCE physical education as easy as ABC. Welcome back. Today I'd like to talk about projectile motion. Haven't had a VCAR question on projectile motion over the last 2 years, so who knows, maybe this year will be the year. People don't find it overly difficult, but interestingly when I was putting this together, I was able to fill about 10 slides. So here we go. Basically a projectile is any object that is airborne, remembering that humans can also be projectiles when they jump. Whilst in the air, the only forces that will affect the flight of a projectile are gravity, vertical, and air resistance, horizontal. But before the object is airborne, we can have a fair say on the flight path. And the way we do that is via the angle, the speed, and the height at which we release the projectile. So these variables will be manipulated depending on what the objective is in the sport. And my good friend here, the basketballer, who probably is trying to get that ball into a hoop, his objective is not to throw the projectile as far as possible. So don't get sucked into thinking that it's always about how far we need to throw the projectile, because sometimes it's about accuracy. Let's break it down into each of those factors. So speed of release is most important, obviously, when we're trying to maximize the horizontal distance that a projectile will travel. The faster we can release that, generally, the further the projectile will go. So angle of release is the angle that the object is projected into the air, and will vary completely on what you're trying to achieve and what sport you're playing. A pole vaulter is obviously wanting to project high into the air, so their angle will be quite high, perhaps even close to 90 degrees, whereas a lawn bowls person is trying to roll the ball on the ground, so their angle is going to be very, very different and closer to zero, and maybe even negative. The angle of release is also dependent upon the height of release and the height of landing. In soccer, where the height of release, the ground, is the same as the height of landing, the ground, then generally 45 degrees is the best angle. But if that's not the case, for example in shot put, where the height of release is at the shoulder and the landing point is the ground, then the angle should be below 45 degrees. And an example of where the height of release is lower than landing could be, for example, in golf. Maybe hitting a wedge shot out of a bunker, and you are going to need to have a higher than 45 degree angle. There's a picture on the next slide that explains that really well. Here we are speaking about heights of release, and you can see in the diagram exactly what I was talking about in the last slide. Generally, for any given speed and angle of release, a projectile release from a higher vantage point is going to travel further, and the reason for that is it just has a longer flight time, so it's in the air for longer before it hits the ground and stops its horizontal distance. Volleyball is a great example where players will manipulate the angles, the heights and the speeds all of the time. The picture here shows a volleyballer launching themselves, once again a projectile, into the air so they can get high above the net. Therefore, they can hit the ball down at a low angle of release and hit it really hard, and it still lands in the court and is obviously more difficult to return. Here's a video that I prepared to show you exactly what I mean there.